And welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. I would like to formally introduce today's guest, Natalie Principe. She was the head of corporate innovation at Organon and global strategy and operations at Merck. She is the president of Extend Health Consulting Incorporated and acting COO of Actual Healthcare Solutions. And on top of it all, she is a Women's Health Tech Initiative board member. So thank you so much, Natalie, for being here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Nia. This is great. I always try to catch this Wednesday's event.
I love that. That's amazing. And I mean, we have so much to get into today, but I think before we jump into the conversation, would love if maybe to start things off, you could give us just a very quick background, kind of walk us through your career journey that has led you to where you are right now.
Oh, geez. I grew up in the pharma world, and very, very early on, it became clear to me, even starting as a sales rep, that unless I really, really believed in the product, that the data was there, the claims that we're making, were robust, I didn't want anything to do with it. And I always followed this principle that my dad gave to me when I actually turned down a position at NIH to go work for Abbott at the time. We're talking, this is in the 90s. He said, don't forget who you are, right? And so that's what I've always tried to kind of follow. So that led me on just an amazing path. Been in many different therapeutic areas. The most recent, I was at Merck back in, probably about 15 years ago. I was a global marketing leader for fertility, worldwide. And that was really important to me because such high unmet need, right? Women's ability to get pregnant, and they didn't have the tools to do it. Then I moved to Australia as an expat for Merck for 3 years, where I led the specialty business in Australia, which exposed me to oncology as well. And then I came back, repatriated into the US, and helped build the Merck oncology business.
Wow.
Zero sales to the time I left to 21 billion. And there I was global strategy and operations. And then I helped spin off Organon. And then that's when I headed up head of innovation for digital health therapeutics. That was a really fun job because in that time I evaluated 300 plus femtech or digital therapeutics. So I got a very good feel for startups, what would make them successful, where their holes and gaps were, things like that. Loved that experience. But then I decided to depart because it wasn't the right time for Organon to invest. Brand new company. They needed to work on, foundational issues. But I had learned so much that I felt like I had to take it out, right? And just continue the journey. I mean, Organon sent me to Columbia University. So I did the whole digital, health therapeutic program there. And I just gained all of this knowledge. And so that's kind of why I am where I am. And, we'll talk a little bit more about how I ended up getting into health IT, I guess, in a little bit.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you for that introduction. I mean, I could just tell you have such a wealth treasure trove of information. So I think that is so incredible. And maybe to, really go from there, and I'm just using all of your experience that you've had when it comes to kind of digital startups and the women's health space. How are you kind of seeing this intersect, specifically since you've had so much experience kind of taking a deep dive into a lot of these areas?
Yeah. It needed to happen. I mean, there's such a paucity of data, right, and bias, towards male conditions, right, and diseases. I think we have a pretty homogeneous group here listening in, so I don't expect that is controversial at all. And I mean, the data is so lacking. But yet women are suffering and need some solutions. Women, thank goodness, became empowered and decided to go search for those solutions, right? And not wait, which is absolutely needed. And I applaud that, and I really want to help stimulate that. But at the same time, I do feel we're at a bit of an intersection. We have a very positive driver, but I think there's some warning signals that we should think about. It's overcrowding in the app space of point solutions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about wellness products here, are more hype versus actual data-driven outcomes. And, I've got a very deep belief system. If you're going to say something, you better have the data to back it up. Correlation is not enough. And it's this belief, right, is probably what is preventing just the amazing AI innovations, digital platforms from being further along in the healthcare system and being adopted there. So we have to understand the difference between evidence-based outcomes and not just evidence-backed. Evidence-backed are needed.
Yes.
Please, right? We need them because that's the way to access more patients. Right. Through digitizing solutions, right? Putting those solutions in the women's hands. But if we really want to make a dent and progress, then we need to think that is the start point, not the end point. Right. And look towards outcomes. And I do believe that data will prevail. It's the best way to differentiate yourself among some crowded markets. And I do believe that those will start to fade away, the ones that don't do it.
I love that. And I like that delineation that you made between evidence-based and evidence-backed. And kind of going off of what you were saying about the wellness space, I think is so powerful because, we're seeing this big rise in natural solutions, holistic supplements, all of that. But I would imagine that they probably, can get away, or there's just very different levels of evidence-based. So I would love if you could elaborate a little bit more on kind of what you are seeing really needs to change in the wellness space as a consumer, as someone that is potentially buying these solutions, but also as people that are making the supplements or the wellness products.
Yeah. Overall, I think, we need to raise the bar, from just type or correlation, right, to actual data. And I'm not talking about the level, of an FDA drug clinical trial, by no means. But we just have to get beyond the loose correlations. I think if you're saying that X has an impact on Y, and Y is a big unmet need, and your product is correlated to X, that's not good enough.
Right.
Okay. So I think, software as a medical device, the different pathways, that section of the FDA is more innovative. Yeah. And I think to be successful, you have to be thinking early on about how you want to develop your product, how you want to develop your data, and the regulatory pathways to get there. Because if you go in early, you have conversations, chances, right, of you being successful, I do think increase.
Absolutely.
And that can help.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that you're kind of talking too about just starting the process early and really thinking from a data perspective and almost making that like the backbone of the company. I really like that. Yeah. Before we kind of get into, because I really want to also pick your brain about the work that you do kind of from a consulting perspective. But I'm just so curious because wellness is like so top of mind, I think, for a lot of people. For you as a consumer, how are you kind of, identifying, or what's kind of your thought process when it comes to trying new wellness solutions, if that is something that you do? Very curious.
Yeah, no, look, I do, but I don't think I'm your average consumer. I do believe I'm a bit hardwired. I'm going to go into the level of detail. I believe in probiotics, right? So I think there's enough evidence there, right? Strong signals,
Right.
But they're not necessarily all like, right? So I'm the one that'll break down the different 10 to 20 components and see, which one I might benefit from most. I think to an extent, if I'm picking between two, I'm going to pick the one that has the better data, as long as I've seen that their design of the product is because of the data, right, that they've learned, right? And they've made the modifications that could make it a more efficacious product.
Absolutely. And I was wholeheartely selfishly asking that because I myself am wanting to get better at just general awareness, I think, just as a consumer. So thank you for indulging me with that question.
No worries.
Wanted to kind of ask you a little bit and pivot, since I know, you have done so much, to kind of speak a little bit more to the work that you do right now as president of Extend Health Consulting Incorporated. For you, I know this kind of started as a solo venture. What really motivated the expansion of this team, of this group? Would love if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the expansion of the team is, just for me, kind of one starting out after Organon, to now having, R&D expertise, as well as regulatory expertise and data, AI, and analytics expertise. So there's a consistent theme among my first set of clients, right? I discovered foundational gaps that I felt were getting in the way of the product meeting its full potential, right? That missing that holistic piece, you were leaving value on the table.
Right.
Now, obviously, this is not a new, right? Everybody knows startups have gaps. Natalie, you just told me something I already know. But what I found the gap is in a efficient and collaborative way that a startup could access what they needed, right? And that it wasn't cost prohibitive. So I think that's really the key thing. So I actually stepped back a little bit and stopped taking clients on and really gave it some thought. And that's when I started, did a little pilot, developed, a collaboration with an R&D, took on a client, saw how it went. And, I'm like, okay, there's something here, because that really worked. And R&D going in by itself wouldn't have been successful. Commercial going in by itself wouldn't have been successful. It's a combination of the two, along with the strength of the startup, that made the difference. So, then I had I knew I had a regulatory gap. And, startups, when they're looking for that, they need someone that is willing to go beyond the consulting and the strategic level.
Right.
And sometimes that becomes very cost prohibitive for them. So I've been playing around, with a model, right, that works and, that can be sustainable for us.
That's incredible. So it's almost kind of like arming them with like tools in a toolkit of just information, of experts kind of in the space as they navigate. That's incredible. And wanted to ask you, and I know that, for you right now, you have been, building your team. And for folks on the call that are either, in the startup space, kind of now starting to think about hiring and building their teams, or just, working in corporate and looking to build a new team, what for you, what's kind of the secret sauce? What are you kind of looking at when it comes to building this robust, team that's going to help to make impact?
It's amazing. And it is a secret sauce. I talk to the team and they know I'm doing this, and they're like, well, don't give away our IP. And so really
whatever
funny.
You can share.
Yeah, very funny. And I said, oh, I'm not worried about that. If there's other, people that want to combine together and provide this type of expertise, more, go ahead and do it, because that's actually not what makes us work. And I'm getting to your point, right? It's about the people, and how we work together, what our mindset is, and our overall fit. It makes all the difference in the world. You know, an analogy, you can look at big pharma. They always have these functions, right? But how they execute it can vary vastly. Those that do it well have a competitive advantage. So when I think about it, the mindset, it has to be a growth mindset. I know that seems to be a little bit of a buzzword, but, you know, what I'm looking for is a deep appreciation, you know, that diversity of thought, you know, is a must. Being open to it, understanding that new approaches, right, might open up your mind, and that unlocks creativity. So for me, you know, I call it dating before you make a commitment. And, you know, I engage, have conversations, get a feel for, you know, how people operate. And I have a similar philosophy on ways of working. You know, do they know what good looks like?
Two very different definitions
really
of that, I would imagine.
Huh?
So because people probably have very different definitions of that, I would imagine too.
Yeah, but I love hearing it, and through hearing it, I'll get a sense of, you know, if we're really going to be a good fit, because I don't want anything get in the way of what we have to deliver. You know, I don't want to spend client time and money trying to figure out how we work together, right? So that's what's really important. And I am always looking out then for what is the best way, you know, to deliver for our customers, and continually evaluating, do we have a gap, right? And that becomes a group conversation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I could tell it's very kind of collaborative and so focused on, you know, cultivating the right culture, the right mindset, having those types of similarities beyond just, you know, are you an expert, or do you have kind of the technical requirements for the role, which I think is so important now. So I love that that's something that's so top of mind for you.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of speaking to the diversity that you have on your team, you know, for you, how does Extend Health Consultants leverage all of these various, you know, disciplines to kind of help support your clients, particularly in, you know, these smaller digital startups or, you know, small bio startup spaces as well?
Yeah. When we first meet a startup, you know, I call it, we listen, and we listen a lot, right, before we act. And, you know, we want to get a sense for their needs, how they articulate them, get a sense for where their talent gaps are, you know, and what's missing, you know, and, you know, they get there. And so that's then, you know, when we identify those, we look at our bench and we figure out, okay, do we dial up the whole team? Hey, we need to dial up regulatory here. We can dial down, you know, AI, right? We customize to their needs. And that's where the, you know, the title of the company comes from. We act as an extension of that team. You know, we want to kind of be in for a period of time to help them achieve their results and pull out, right? So that they're at a point where they're ready, you know, to make those investments in their functional areas. And they're working with us, they know what good looks like. So I don't know if that makes sense. I see a lot of talented CEOs, and the best ones, they know what they don't know. And they're open, right, to having a conversation about it.
Absolutely. No, and I like that it's very much just kind of like listening first, really understanding the full picture, and kind of knowing what needs to be like turned up or not turned up, which makes a lot of sense.
The other thing I'll add to that, though, is they'll tell us what they need, but, you know, I like to let that percolate, and, you know, there might be something completely else that they weren't thinking about that needs to be done first. And, you know, we're the type of company, you know, that will have that conversation. You know, we're not just interested in, okay, yes, we can do this, and, you know, and send them an invoice. That's, you know, that's not how we operate. That's not one of our guiding principles.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense too. You really are kind of the extension of the team, wanting the team's best interest at heart, which is, always great to see. Natalie, wanted to ask you, since when you're not doing that, you are also the CEO of Acutal Healthcare Solutions. What kind of inspired your transition into this role of acting COO, especially kind of considering the background that you had shared in the beginning, when it kind of, the pharma background, your consulting background. I would imagine this has been such a fun and interesting shift for you. So I'd love if you could share a little bit more about that.
Sure. I mean, it is really quite interesting. Kind of, I don't call it as much a shift as I do an expansion.
Love that.
If that makes sense. Health IT, I did not know that world at all. I mean, not at all. But I was very curious. I met the CEO, very talented individual, Jamie Wisser, and he had a brilliant idea. He had started to build out a platform, for accurate and high quality data exchange between physicians. That in a way bypassed EMR, so you don't run into that data dive, right? To try to figure out, what data do you need on the patient? Do you have the right patient? Do you have the right John Smith? Things of that nature. And the platform was designed in a way where it automated parts of the office flow that worked for the providers. And I think we, are well aware in this space, it's usually the opposite. So I thought, oh, there's something here. So what's the product, right? And so I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I can actually, create a product from this. And that was exciting to me, just kind of as a marketer. Yeah. And I just, thought I want to learn the space because I think there is a lot of intersections. And for me, I decided to take it on when I realized that the outcomes possible actually would impact patient health, patient care, and add value to the providers through patient acquisition. So that I thought was a really nice marriage. So I decided to do it. And then I had to learn the space. It was a marketing challenge, right? I didn't know the space. I had to segment, create the product, the positioning, all of it. So it was fun.
That's incredible. And I know we're about 5 minutes out, so wanted to continue to pick your brain. For you, I think as someone that has been, new to the space, but still very, very familiar with just broader healthcare, as you were kind of having to develop this product, what were some of the challenges that you have kind of uncovered within this broader healthcare IT space? And I also know that you have a beta study kind of coming out to help maybe solve some of those problems. But we'd love if you could share your insights that you've learned, with us.
Understand what their end them are targeted. Then you've got ones that try to touch everything. That took me a really long time to figure out, and be confident, that the product we've designed, LMRX R, actually was working in white space without direct competitors with an incredibly strong patent. It took me a long time to dissect and get there. I would say if you had somebody that really knows the space, they definitely could have done it a lot quicker. But the beauty of kind of going through that is what led me to, okay, so how do we design a study, that will allow us to calculate the value proposition? Because, if anybody's going to pay for it, that's what you need. You have to prove the patient acquisition. You have to prove the value. You have to prove that you do what the product does, even if it's health IT. At that point, if the CEO has said, no, I don't need, or I don't want any of that, great, then I'm not the right person for you. Because again, back to, what we want to accomplish. And that is, helping integrate appropriate digital healthcare into healthcare, right? To have the right impact. Does that answer your question? So the beta then is basically, optimize to succeed. So I brought in an R&D partner to help with that. And realistic endpoints, that meet the criteria that will allow us, to make the claims that we're making, and to give us the data that will support a value proposition on patient acquisition.
That's
Prospectively, like, not
no,
correlative.
totally. And I think I could imagine, as someone that has kind of come into the space, you probably just very much have that unbiased view where you are kind of able to look at it from probably a very fresh perspective, which I would imagine has only really helped. So I think that is kind of worked out really well.
Yeah, I've been told that. It was nice. I was extremely nervous, when an expert in the space, kind of took a look at the pitch deck, right? I'm like, he's like, no, you actually got it right. That was nice, but it definitely took me a lot longer than it would have for somebody that knew the space.
Yeah, definitely. But I love that. I think really, Natalie, you're just inspiring me because you're always kind of, learning something new, just continuing to evolve. And I like how you're talking about not necessarily even having shifts, but expansions in your career, which I think is so powerful. I know we have about a minute out, so I wanted to ask one of my favorite questions, which is, do you have any words of advice for other women that are listening right now that are either starting their career or are thinking about a career expansion into maybe a new area? Any words of wisdom that you have to share with us?
Yeah. So it's, I did think a lot about this because, you did tell me you were going to ask this question. So I'll put it this way: get to know yourself, know who you are, what drives you, right? What are you passionate about? Where do you excel? What are you not great at, right? Be open to it. Wherever you go in your career, every company that you work with, you're responsible for your development, not the company. Right. So if they don't have formalized plans, seek out feedback, right? Better yourself, stay relevant. I love that. And, I'm going to share a little 1, 2, 3. It's counterintuitive to people that haven't heard it before. You will make mistakes in your career. Okay. Sometimes it can be really big. Okay. Your company might not be happy about it. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, you can't undo it. So embrace it and see the opportunity in it. Okay. Separate yourself from the action or a decision you made from who you are as a future employee, a future leader in that company. So it's a 3-step process. Own it, right? Accept responsibility for what happened. Don't try to cover it up. Don't try to talk it away. 2, most importantly, learn from it. And then 3, you will become better because of it. If you've gone through your career and you haven't really made like a big mistake, then I'm just going to say you haven't reached your full potential.
Wow. That's amazing.
I hope that helps.
That definitely does. Thank you so much, Natalie. What an incredible, enlightening conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. And what a powerful way to end, can I just say? That was incredible, incredible words of advice.
Well, I've learned from a lot of great people. A lot of great CEOs exist in the startup world. One of the most impressive I just met was Duroc Cook, who's CEO of Expect Fitness. Wow. So, we all need to band together.
Absolutely.
That next generation too.
100%. The power of, I think, community and collaboration just knows no bounds, honestly. Yeah. That is amazing. Thank you so much, Natalie, for taking the time to chat with us today.